welcome back into the studio for another Mixed Media Basics. This time we are going to talk about the differences between a few of the ink pads that are inks that are available by Ranger, specifically the Tim Holtz Distress line. Now we're going to talk about Distress ink, the Distress Oxide ink, and the Distress Archival ink. And this came to me from a question, and so I thought, oh, what better way to really dive into the differences and attributes to each of these types of inks than to do it on a Mixed Media Basics. So I have both the Distress ink and the Distress Oxide ink in walnut stain so that we can see some of the differences. We're going to kind of put it through their test. And then I have both the Vintage Photo in the Distress ink. I do not have it in the Distress Oxide, and in the Archival in the Vintage Photo, and some of the ways that this is beneficial. So that we're going to talk about that. The nice thing about these inks is they, in color, they match the whole line. So whether or not you have the Distress Oxide spray or this Distress Spray Stain or the ink pads or the re-inkers, they will match in color. So that's the big bonus with this line. All right, so first off, let's talk about the Distress ink. So this is the regular Distress ink, not to be confused with the Archival ink. It is water-based, so it is water reactive or water soluble. It is fade resistant, but it is not light fast, meaning over time it is gonna fade. And this ink is a dye-based ink. Now, the Distress Oxides are considered a fusion because they are a dye-based and a pigment-based ink. They've been fused together to get that oxidization effect. So they are water reactive. So when they are sprayed with water, they're water soluble, so when sprayed, they will move. So when you do spray them with water, they will create an oxidized effect. Now, the Distress Archival ink matches, this is Vintage Photo, and it will match the Distress ink in the regular stain or the oxide. They will match, although the oxide will have that oxidization effect. The Distress Archival ink, it differs from the Distress inks in that it is waterproof, acid-free, and permanent, as well as being fade resistant. This is a dye-based ink. It will not bleed with you when it's used with other water-soluble media. So we're going to kind of take a look at these and put them through a little bit of demonstration here. So I'm going to put these off to the side because we're going to start with the walnut stain in the Distress ink and the Distress Oxide. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp with this. These are just stamps that I've designed and carved myself. Okay, and then you can really get an idea and see the color of that walnut. It's a wonderful color. I'm going to also put a blending tool, use the blending tool and show you what you can get when you use it on edges to do your edging. You see a lot of people doing this. You can do it with a blending tool. You can pull out more and have it softer, or you can move it into the center and kind of soften it up. The other thing you can do is you can use it directly and it's more intense. You can come back over it and edge it, and you kind of get a darker appearance on the edge, and where you blend it, it comes in lighter. So that's also an option. So that is the distressed ink in the walnut stain. All right, so now we're gonna do the distress oxide, and you can see the difference here in the pad. It looks like a different color. It looks lighter, and that's because of the oxidization effects that you can get with this. I'm gonna go ahead and stamp it. I could have done a better job there. And I'm going to turn this to the other side and give you what the edge looks like with the blending tool. And then I'm going to come in and show you if you do it directly right on there. And then blend it on this side. Get that edging. That is the distress oxide. Okay, now we're going to switch over to the vintage photo. And this is the same. This is the same. It's a distressed ink. Okay, and vintage photo is a popular one for inking up the edges, kind of giving things that finished look. And then we'll go ahead and do the same thing. All right, and that is the vintage photo. So now we're going to use the vintage photo in the distress archival ink. You can see very similar. And you can see the color is the same. And we're going to come in and do some edging in the same method we did before. Get that intense look. Okay. So that is all of our inks that we're going to take a look at. Now I'm going to come in with water and mist these. So this is the walnut stain in the distress ink and in the oxide. So if you had a project that you edged and it got wet, that's what's going to happen. It is going to bleed because this is water soluble. And that's fine, but if you're edging and then you decide to come back in with some water-based item method, spray it with water or another water-based, the edges are going to bleed. If you want that look, then it's great. If not, or if you're selling your items and they're done in the distress ink or the distress oxide, and whoever purchased it gets it wet, this is what is going to happen. So that is because it is water reactive, water soluble, water based. Here's the oxide, and it's going to do the same thing. It's bleeding along that edge. And we'll see as this starts to dry, we'll see the oxidization happening. So we'll come back to that. So this should react exactly like the walnut stain did here in the distress ink, but this is vintage photo. And as you can see, it's bleeding in because it is water-based, water reactive, water soluble. And then this is the archival in the same color, also in the distress line. And you will notice it is not bleeding. And I've got that pretty soaked. No bleeding. Because the archival ink is waterproof. It's permanent. It will not bleed when used with other water-based media. And that is the main difference between the distress inks in the standard versus the archival. And as you can see here, these are the same color, but it definitely, when it bleeds out, it gets lighter. So you can start to see here some of the oxidization that's happening. I'm gonna go ahead and dry this, and actually maybe what we'll do is I'm gonna come in with more ink on this so I can get it a little bit more intense and you can see the oxidization a little bit better. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and dry this and then I'll be right back. Okay, so this is dried, and can you see how there's a bit of a white oxidization effect going on here? It's kind of hard to see it on these, but you kind of see the outline of the white area there. Now I'm also going to show you in the walnut stain, I'm going to show you the difference between the oxide spray and the the distress oxide spray and the distress spray stain. And similarly to the inks, they're going to react the same way. However, with these, we have the ability to spray. Now, you don't really need to shake up the spray stain, but I do. That'll give us a little... I love the walnut stain. But with the oxide, you really want to shake it up because you can really see the separation. The oxide, the white particles that make that oxidization effect, have moved to the bottom. And they all have a bearing in there, like a metal BB, to stir them up. So it doesn't take much to get them stirred up. And so you can see these are in the same color. And let's get it dried first. Okay, I've purposely only partially dried these because something that's really fun is you can come in with a paper towel and pull up what did not get dried and get a neat effect. And similarly, I may have let this one go too long to really get it. Yeah. So then I'm gonna come in with some water. And if you let that water sit on there for a little bit and come back in with a paper towel and lift, you can get some fun speckling happening where that water reacted with the spray, and you get some lighter color areas. You can do that with the oxide as well. But mostly what you're going to see with the oxide is you can see that white oxidization effect. Let's get some more on there. And usually you want to let it sit a few seconds when you spray that water on there to let it really reconstitute that spray, and then you can pull that color up and get a nice speckled kind of look where that water was. I'm gonna let this run a little bit. And then I'm gonna come back and dry this. You can already see wherever that water touched, it's reacting and bringing those white particles to the surface that gives us that oxidization look. And that's where you can start to see the difference between the oxide spray and the spray stain. And that's the difference between Distress inks, Distress Oxide inks, and the Distress Archival inks. I hope that's been helpful to demystify a little bit about inks. All right, so now that we have gone over the differences between the Oxide inks by Ranger in the Distress line, the regular ink, and the archival inks, I thought it might be fun to do a project so you can actually see these being used onto a piece. So I've pulled out these colors. I have the Hickory Smoke and the Faded Jeans in the Distress Archival. I have the Faded Jeans and the Worn Lipstick in the Distress Oxide, and I have the Walnut Stain in the regular Distress ink. So that is what I'm thinking I'm going to be using. I'm going to use this old vintage tag, and it has this wire. I'm going to take the wire off just for arting on the surface, and maybe we'll reapply that at the end. I'm not sure. So what I'm going to start with first is I am actually going to pull out my giblet basket, my little bits basket. These are all different pieces that have just been waste left over from other projects, and that I've used for collage, and I just stick them in here if they interest me in any way. And so I'm going to pull from these and use those to do some collage work. I am going to collage on the front as well as the back of this tag. So I'm going to get started on that, and then once we get to inking up, then I will have a bit more discussion going on about what I'm doing and how I'm utilizing those inks and their different attributes as I get into finalizing the design on this tag. All right, so let's get started. All right, so I have got the base of this card done on both sides. I don't know which is going to be my front and which is going to be my back as of yet. I have taken into account leaving the hole open because it did have that eyelet in there. And the secondary hole I went ahead and collaged over so you can't see it. I have pulled out this plastic mat. On these mats, there is, I'll list it down below, but there's a slick side and a matte side. For this, I am going to use the slick side. I apologize about the reflection that you're getting initially, because I want to show you a method on using the Distress ink or the Distress oxide, because you can use these. These are both water soluble, so you can use both of these for this method. I'm going to start off with using this worn lipstick, which I think will go well with the pinks that are in here, and that is why I chose it. So, not that I knew there was going to be pinks in here, because I really didn't, but when I was pulling paper out of my bits basket, I definitely was gravitating towards blues and pinks because I was kind of feeling like that today. So I'm going to take this Distress Oxide worn lipstick and give a couple pats onto the plastic. It's hard to see, but it is there. And then I'm just going to give it a little bit of a spritz and get it moving around a little bit. And so, as we know about the Distress Oxide, it's the fusion ink, and it is water soluble, and it will leave an oxidized effect when it's sprayed with water. So now I'm going to take this, and on this area right here, I'm going to kind of dip it in and get some ink and let it just kind of run around and pool in areas. I'm going to get a little bit up in here. Like so. I'm going to set this to the side and give this a quick dry. You can really see on here, maybe not, you can see the white. That is the oxidization. Okay, so now that that's good and dry, I'm going to work on this back side. I'm going to get some, if this had dried, we could respray it, and because it's water soluble, it will just do the same thing. So I'm going to come in here, get some in there, and then down in here. All right, and because I don't want this getting onto anything else, I'm going to give this a swipe off and set this aside. And then I'm going to get this dry. All right, now I was really tempted to go in with the faded jeans, but if I go in and hit any areas where this worn lipstick was, I'm going to reactivate the pink and get some mixing, and we'll have some purples. One way that you can get around that is you can use the faded jeans. However, it is not water soluble. It is not going to move like these oxides do. So there is another method, and I'm going to show that to you now. Still using the mat. And I'm going to get a little bit on here and activate it with the spritz. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with a round brush and pick up the ink and be more precise about where I'm laying it down. So I'm going to come in and I'm gonna still let it pool and do the things it wants to do. But in specific areas where it's not gonna really mix with that pink. And you can even go in with some sprinkles if you want and do something like that. All right, I'm gonna give that a bit of a dry. Okay, so that's good and dry. I'm gonna flip it over and work on this other side. Just adding a little bit of that color. Here you can see it's mixed with the pink and kind of made more of a purple. All right, clean my brush off. And I'm gonna give this a bit of a dry. Okay, so now I'm gonna do a couple things. The first thing is I'm gonna come in with this walnut stain with my blender all on the edges on both sides like I normally would. Kind of finishes it off, gives it an edge, kind of adds a little grunge, a little vintageness. I'm going to do the same on the other side. Okay, so that is this distress ink. There's no oxidization happening. You can see some of the oxidization happening in areas. It's harder on this tag because there's so much going on. If we were to go in with a darker color in that oxidized ink, we would see that better. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a very light mist to this because I'm going to activate what I just did. Is it going to activate the pink and the blue? Yes, it is. I'm going to try and just go to the outside edge and be really light about that. And you can see how it is already activating, especially up in this corner. It's just moving a little bit. It gets these little dots where the water hit it, and I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to dry it. It really softens it up. Here's the side that I haven't done. You can see it kind of still has a bit of an edge to it, whereas this really is softened up. So I'm going to treat it the same way. Again, that top edge, you really saw it happening. Okay, So now that that's dry, I would really like to come in with an archival ink in walnut stain, but I don't have the archival in the walnut yet. But I do have it in the ground espresso, which is slightly darker. And I'm going to do a technique that I like to do, which is just come around on the edge, and it kind of gives this dark shadow to it, but it's not coming up onto the front. And that'll be good for both sides. Just make sure. There we go. Okay. There we are. All right. So I like where I am at, and that is using the archivals, the distress oxides, and the distress inks in the Ranger Tim Holtz distress line to add color and dimension to this tag. And now I have a wonderful base to now go in and add a focal or whatever else that I want to get added to this tag.
I've gotten asked quite often where I got my rainbow glue holder. So not only do I have this rainbow one, but I have a bright green one as well. And recently I got an ATG gun holster, and I'm showing them to you here. And down below in the description box, I do have all the supplies used and the link to where I got these wonderful little glue holders. Made it by Marco on Etsy is where I got them, and they're awesome. And they make great art friend gifts.